On today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast, we talk a little bit about last night's turnover-filled game in Knoxville, Tennessee. We look at the coaching turnover that's going on in Ole Miss football, and we take a look at the transfer portal and how that will be a make-or-break prospect for Lane Kiffin in the 2022 season. Anyway, this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Willis. Thank you very much for tuning in today. We got a lot to get to. We got a lot of stuff to do. Before we get started, though, I do want to tell you today's episode is brought to you by NetSuite. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system to power your growth. Head to netsuite.com/LockedOnNCA for special end-of-year financing for the #1 financial system for growing business. And, of course, thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So it looks a little bit different. We're always trying to improve. Thank you for tuning in today. Now, it was one of those games. I had a tweet last night. It was like, we need to hang this game in the Louvre because it was just the epitome of ugly basketball. And it's basically the same game that was played last year when Ole Miss won 52-50. And this year, it goes into overtime in like 53-53. It was pretty much the same game. You had some bad shooting on both sides. Hey, Matt Morrell really came through. Ty Fagan from the three-point line, I think he was 5 of 5 or 5 of 6. Both of which are high double-figure scores for the game. And that was positive with Jarkel Joyner being out for that game. But the main thing that you take from it is just the aesthetic, and there was really no rhythm, and it wasn't because of fouls. That's the amazing thing. It wasn't something where both teams were getting into foul trouble or one team had 42 fouls called for the game. It was a game with turnovers just breaking up the rhythm of the game, and everything is kind of what you would expect in a basketball game. It was counterproductive to what was going on in the game. I mean, you might have 4 straight possessions with turnovers. The game started the first 8 minutes of the game. Tennessee did not score a point. Ole Miss didn't score many either. It was like 13 minutes left and it was 5-0 or something like that. It was absolutely ridiculous. The under 16 timeout went to the break at 0-0. It was a weird game, and Tennessee being ranked, it was a game that they were supposed to boat race. If you listened to the podcast yesterday, we told you we needed outside shots to fall. And if that did, they had a chance to make it close. If Tennessee shots were falling, it had a chance to be a boat race. And you probably could see that during the game. And this Tennessee team is feisty defensively. I don't know what they do or how they do it defensively on the side of the ball, but they are feisty. You expect hand checks and you expect all these BS calls to come out, and no, they let them play. But I don't think Tennessee was fouling to begin with. They were just playing hard-nosed defense to where everything you do, it was really, really honestly fun to see. I like defensive basketball, by the way. That's one of the reasons that my opinion is going to be slanted one way or another. I like offensive basketball, okay, but defensive basketball I really enjoy. I don't like to see a 94-90 game in college basketball, but I can take one of these type games and actually enjoy it for what it is. Now, Ole Miss has a problem at backup point guard. They turned the ball over, I think, 27 times last night. Some really obscene number. Turned the ball over 27 times. And they were an okay basketball team when Deshaun Ruffin was on the court. Whenever he went out with his severe cramp with like a minute and a half to go in the game was essentially lost. Because they just didn't have anybody besides him that you could just count on to bring the ball up. There was a 10-second call that was just lack of awareness. There was several times where passes were just lazily thrown and was picked off. And those issues were masked, maybe is the right word, covered up a little bit whenever Deshaun Ruffin was in the game, because Tennessee had to really work to stay in front of him, because he didn't finish necessarily well at the rim. That wasn't his game last night, but he would kick out to Matthew Morrell. He'd kick out to Ty Fagan, and they'd shoot a three and make it. And from the three-point percentage off of his drive when he was starting, Ole Miss had a good three-point percentage. This should do wonders for the confidence of the players. Matthew Morrell, Ty Fagan from outside the arc, because we've struggled shooting three-point shots this season. And we go through lulls to where it's just difficult. Everything's just a slog, and everything becomes hard. And there's no outside shots that allows defenses to compress in on you. And it makes it a little bit harder. These outside shots start falling just in time for SEC play. It has a chance to build the confidence as SEC play progresses. That's my point there. And in doing so, I think they will get better and better from the outside, especially offensively. And Jarkel Joyner coming back will absolutely help. It hurt him not being there, but Matthew Morrell and Ty Fagan really stepped up. They played their best games as Ole Miss Rebels, I think. And because of that, I mean, you could see how it got lifted. And whenever Ruffin goes out, those guys are less effective. Those wings are more covered. I don't know what it is. Everything gets nervous. Everybody's afraid of Deshaun Ruffin driving. There's help side defense all over the place whenever he drives. That's going to open up those three-point shots that would normally be covered, and they're starting to make a few of them. So it'll be interesting to see moving forward exactly how the three-point shot and the Ole Miss basketball team offensively, how it develops. And so I'm looking forward to see that. So real quick, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the coaching turnover on Ole Miss football. And a little bit later, we're going to talk about the transfer portal on Ole Miss football. But right now, let's hear from a word from our sponsors, NetSuite. This is it, the putt to win the tournament. If you sink it, the championship is yours. But on your backswing, your hat falls over your eyes. Is this how you're running your business? Poor visibility because you're still relying on spreadsheets and outdated finance software? To see the full picture, you need to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle. Over 27,000 businesses already use NetSuite, and right now, through the end of the year, NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind financing program to those ready to upgrade at netsuite.com/LockedOnNCA. Head to netsuite.com/LockedOnNCA for your special end-of-year financing on the #1 financial system for growing businesses. That's netsuite.lockedon. That's netsuite.com/LockedOnNCA. So you give those guys a good look. They're the #1 cloud financial system that will help power your growth, and basically, it's a pretty good deal. So give them a call, netsuite.com/LockedOnNCAA. All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell so you'll know, not only know that we're streaming, you'll know what we're streaming about, and that will help you out as we move forward. So definitely subscribe, hit the bell, do all that on the YouTube thing. So it should be a lot of fun. So Ole Miss football has a little bit of staff turnover right now. It happens to all programs, especially all successful programs. And I think Ole Miss needs to understand that whenever you're successful, people are going to come in and try and want your people. I mean, that happens all over the place. Some people are curious about where they're going. There's probably reasons for that. Jeff Lebby going to Oklahoma, he's an Oklahoma guy. DJ Durkin going to Texas A&M. This is my thought on that, and specifically that. I don't think the 3-2-6 was his idea. I don't think that's his defense. I think mixing that into his defense with the personnel caused a little bit of a rift. I think after the Arkansas game, when everybody wanted to fire him, and because everybody wanted to fire him. So don't look back. Like the first 6 games and the last 6 games are 2 completely different scenarios. Everybody wanted to get rid of DJ Durkin. I told people, let it play out. Let it happen. Let this be what it is. And then it got better and better and better and better. And the defense actually got better last year as well. But the 3-2-6, I do not believe was his defense. I believe that was a Lane force to put in. He's in control of his program. That happened, and that probably upset DJ Durkin. That is my theory. That is my opinion. That is my thought. It's just like Wilson Love going to Oregon. Wilson Love is Lane's guy and all of this stuff that you hear about all the time. Ole Miss this year lost a game to Auburn that would have put them in the playoff because of an entire position group losing their starters to a majority muscle injuries. That's on the strength and conditioning coach. That is who goes down for doing something like that. Now, they're talking about strained relationships and things like that. I imagine that relationship after that was strained. I just do. Because whenever there's a muscle injury, the strength and conditioning coach is going to get blamed. That's just the way it works. It's the way it always happens. And in the spring game, we were out all wide receivers. In the Auburn game, we were out all wide receivers. We're stretching or doing something wrong that allowed those muscle injuries to happen. Nothing against Wilson Love, nothing against Lane Kiffin. That's just the facts. And Lane Kiffin is fairly brutal with his coaches, and he doesn't tolerate failure. If there's failure, you have a hard time getting back. So, again, after Arkansas, he dressed down the defense a little bit. It was probably fairly hard for DJ Durkin to ever get back to where he needed to be. Wilson Love, same thing. That game against Auburn potentially cost Ole Miss a playoff. This is a really big deal. And nobody's saying either one of them is a bad coach. I'm saying that both of them are going to get the blame from the head man. And the relationship is going to change just because of how he operates, how he does things. So whenever you hear of a strained workplace environment, it is going to be a situation where it's really hard to come back once you dig that hole. Once you dig a hole, it doesn't matter who you are. It's really hard to get back to level ground. And that is going to be the case on DJ Durkin. That is going to be the case on Wilson Love. Jeff Lebby just wanted to go back to Oklahoma. I think he wanted to go back to where someplace the offense can be his. Because down here, it's Lane's offense. Lane's doing this, Lane's doing that. It's not yours. And I think that he wanted something that could be his, and he can move on to the head coaching realm because he knew at Ole Miss, with it being Lane Kiffin's offense, it was going to be hard for him to get a head coaching gig. Even though we expected him to get a head coaching gig, it's going to be hard for that to happen. But with DJ Durkin and Wilson Love, that's how I think that went down. I think the strained relationship that you hear over and over is going to be as a result of basically digging that hole and trying to get out of it. Because, you know, he's got all confidence in the world until it completely blows up on you. In that Arkansas game, it completely blew up on him. And the whole fan base turned on him, and everybody was talking about changing. There was people talking on podcast about scheme and will the 3-2-6 actually work? And we see that it will. It obviously will. It did as the season went on. But in that particular game, a hole was a little bit it was dug. Same thing when it comes to the Auburn game and muscle injuries in the wide receiver room. It's just a fact of life when it comes to that, and it should be worth saying. So I'm not overly concerned about these switches. I'm not exactly worried that anything negative is happening with the program. You're going to hear that. All these like all these people are leaving, and I just gave you the reasons why I thought they left. And also, if you hire Chris Partridge as defensive coordinator, promote him and go hire another co-defensive coordinator. That is the way this works. That's the way Alabama has done it for years. Whenever somebody leaves, it doesn't matter where they go and how they go. Go find the next one and put them down as the second in the co. And let the other co be the top guy. That's what they've done. That's how they've operated. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. That's why you have two. And I would honestly do the same thing offensively as well. I would find somebody, whether it be John David Baker or whatever, and give him a co-offensive coordinator title as well. And put him with Charlie Weiss Jr. I would do that, and if somebody leaves, you can just you can promote up, and all is good and continuity is happening in the stat. I believe in continuity, but I think that Chris Partridge is going to get that job, and I think Marquise Watson is going to move up a defensive line. I think Randall Joyner is going to go to linebacker, and I think he might potentially become the co-defensive coordinator. Randall Joyner is a star. Keep him around. Do what's necessary, but that is my thoughts on that. We're going to hear from our sponsors, Get Upside and BetOnline AG, right here. When we come back, we're going to talk about the transfer portal and how Ole Miss is kind of a make-or-break thing for the 2022 season. Hey, Ole Miss fans, this is Stephen Willis with an incredible app everyone who buys, needs gas, needs to know about. Get Upside. My listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now. Use promo code SCORE and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon in your first fill up. That's 50 cents per gallon cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use promo code SCORE to get up to 50% per gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 or $300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added to your account. You can add cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, a gift card, Amazon, or other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code SCORE to get up to 50% cash back on your first tank. That's code SCORE. Sounds like a good deal. All right, BetOnline has you covered all season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march to the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for sports action all this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2021. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Welcome back to the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in today. We're going to talk a little bit about the transfer portal. The transfer portal is important to schools all over the country right now. And it's basically, right now, a mercenary class of athletes is developing. You see it with players that didn't really have a reason to transfer, didn't really have a reason to go. They're getting in the portal and seeing what's available. And that lets you know there's a mercenary thing because they're leaving what was likely a good situation to try and better it. And that mercenary class, you have all conference level players that are willing to jump around and play the NIL game. Is something that you didn't have before. Whenever you had grad transfers or whatever, it was so localized and so focused. But these mercenary players, if you get them, you have a chance. If you get enough of them, you have a chance to be really good. If Ole Miss could snag somebody like Caleb Williams and Zach Evans and the wide receiver Deion Smith, those guys, the offense has a chance to be really good because they are still returning Jalen Knox, Jonathan Mingo, Casey Kelly's going to be back, people like that. Hudson Wolf should be back and healthy. And that's what you can look forward to, what's going on. So it's going to come down to those three positions: wide receiver, quarterback, running back. You need to hit on 3. That is the difference between 7-5 and 9-3. Those 3 positions. Now, I love Luke Altmaier. I'm of the opinion that Ole Miss doesn't need a starting quarterback in the portal. It's not something that was so desperate like it was before. We have to find a starting quarterback in the portal and all of things like that. No, Luke Altmaier proved in the Sugar Bowl that the lights are not going to be too big for him. We're not going to have a Michael Spurlock situation. Everybody remembers Michael Spurlock in 2004, to where he replaces Eli. Everybody's excited. We spend 9 months talking about how good he was, and when the lights came on, it was just a little bit too big for him. Good player, heck of an athlete, had an NFL career, all of that. But for playing starting quarterback at an SEC institution, the lights were a little bit too big for him. Now, with Ole Miss and Zach Evans, should that happen, there's a rumor that there was a conversation at TCU between him and LT the other day that's kind of slowed things down. So I don't know. He could choose to go back. Quarterbacks could choose to come back. I think Grant Wells at Marshall is a heck of a guy. I think Ole Miss needs to look at him. But I think that's the level that Ole Miss needs at quarterback. That level and above. If you don't need to hit a Caleb Williams, you don't need to hit somebody like that, because you don't need a guaranteed starter. You need somebody to compete with Luke Altmaier for the job. And the winner of that job is going to be a damn good quarterback. It just is. Now, if you look at running back, I do think Ole Miss needs a running back. If you get somebody like Zach Evans, which is rumored, like it's been projected a couple times down the road that that's going to happen. If that happens, well, Zach Evans is a combination of Jerry and Ely and Snoop Connor. You've just replaced your whole backfield with one transfer. I mean, that would be a heck of a player. This would be the type player that would be a game changer for the Ole Miss offense. Now, at wide receiver, Deion Smith. That's another guy that's been rumored for 2 or 3 weeks at this point. But he hasn't pulled the trigger yet. He's visited Ole Miss. To my knowledge, Ole Miss is the only place he's visited. So the options for him are probably Ole Miss and returning to LSU. That's probably the 2 options set for him. I think he kind of wants to come home and all of that. Now, Zach Evans and Deion Smith, from what I hear, has a little bit of academic work to do. So that may be delaying their decision. That could be playing a higher role than we think it is. Now, remember, when it comes to the transfer portal, these recruits have all gone through this before. They've gone through this circus, and they don't want to go through what they went through in high school recruiting again, which is an indictment on what's being done. But because of that, in the transfer portal, they don't talk to anybody. The circle stays very small. They do things for them. And there's not a handler. There's not an uncle. There's not somebody with his hand in the pot. It's relevant because those guys leave. This is the reality. Those guys leave whenever the kid signs and everything's done and they've delivered and done what they're supposed to do. They go. They disappear. Well, this one is a very tight circle. And because it's a very tight circle, information doesn't get out. And it isn't as reliable as it is in recruiting. In recruiting, I will say, because of all the handlers and uncles and people trying to publicize their kid, information gets out pretty readily. I mean, everybody kind of knows what's going on in recruiting. In transfers, that's not the case because they've learned lessons from going through that recruiting. And a high-profile kid like Zach Evans, like Caleb Williams, like Deion Smith, they're going to play it insanely close to the vest because there's probably 2 or 3 people that know what's going on. And those people aren't talking because the only thing that can happen by information getting out is it hurts you. As the prospect, as the transfer, Zach Evans. When information gets out, that hurts you. For a lot of reasons, not the slightest, it raises pressure on you from other schools and the school you are at. So that is the reason information doesn't get out in transfer portal. It's not that anybody's doing a bad job. It's just that nobody's talking. Nobody's handling what's going on. And because of that, there's a lot of connecting of dots that happen. There's a lot of assuming things might happen. And because of that, you end up in a pickle, and a lot of stuff that you say is going to happen just doesn't happen. It's one of the downsides of playing the telephone game. I always talk about it. I do not play the telephone game. When there's something to talk about, I will talk about it. But I am not going to make assumptions and hypotheticals and do anything like that, because it serves really no purpose. 90% of what's reported is wrong anyway. So it results in wasted energy and things like that. And I just do not want to do that. But I want to thank everyone for making the Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. Tomorrow, we're going to go a little bit into football, and we're going to, play the transfer portal, the coaches, and just see what's going on around Ole Miss football, getting ready for this weekend. I think, it was supposed to be Davison Egboson, I think is his last name. He was supposed to announce on the 8th. He has COVID. So if you were watching the Army game to see his commitment ceremony, that is not going to happen. I do not know how and when he is going to announce. But he is the Tysheem Johnson of this recruiting class if he signs with Ole Miss. So we might talk a little bit about him. Now, make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. I do want to thank everybody for tuning in today. And we will close out the week with style. We're going to start to get into perspectives. Tom Vanderford's going to come on the show and talk about what's going on. Next week, we're going to have Bill Flowers, Kara McCutcheon. You're going to start to see personalities come on the show, because we want this show to be about perspectives and commentary. That's what we want to do. We do not want to play the telephone game or anything else. Just perspectives and commentary. So tune in for that. And of course, hotty toddy.